Hi, and welcome back to
Inspired the Game. I'm Sean.
And I am Lola. Today we are talking about Castellans. This is a game by Daily Magic Games, who we want to thank for sending us this copy to review. Before we get to that review, we'll give you a very quick overview of how it plays.
Welcome to Kosk, the westernmost city of Valeria. You and your fellow players have been invited to compete to become the city's new Castellan. Now, a game of Castellans is played over 5 months or rounds, consisting of 4 phases each. In the drafting phase, players will take turns drafting dice and receiving the corresponding resources. In the actions phase, they will spend these dice to take actions to gain influence with the guilds and control in the districts. They may go to the wharf to buy and sell resources, and while they're there, launch or move one of their ships. They may build a manor and gain an ongoing power. They can harvest resources and maybe build a windmill, build a temple to gain influence and control, or finally, recruit citizens for their skills. Any die can be used to take any of these actions, but if you use the die that corresponds to the action, you can gain an additional resource. In addition, you can also erect monuments to gain extra victory points at the end of each round. At the end of each of the first 4 rounds, 3 districts will score based on majority. In addition, monuments in any district will also score. Afterwards, you will reset for the next round. At the end of the 5th and final round, all districts will score once again as normal. In addition, players will score victory points based on their influence with each of the 4 guilds. The player with the most victory points at the end will be named the new Castellan of Kosk, the westernmost city in Valeria.
To begin, the artwork here is absolutely beautiful. The same artist that does Merchant's Cove as well as the Firefl games as well. We love his work. The components here are fantastic as well. So you have dual layer player boards, lots of gorgeous little wooden components, and what's really great is that these little components have their own little trays that they fit into. So individual player trays that came pre-set up, all with a little adorable mini rule book for every single player. And I just absolutely loved that setup.
Yeah, and I also want to point out that the majority of the wooden figures are silk-screened on both sides.
So the components are really fantastic. The main mechanics here are dice drafting and area control. This is largely a game all about area control. Now, I love dice drafting. It can be a ton of fun. So you roll all the dice and one by one, you choose what you get. Now, with the die you choose, you get the corresponding resource. So sometimes you're going to choose based on the resources that you need. However, they also correspond to certain actions. So often you're going to want to take ones based on what actions you know you want to do that round, because if you play that with the proper corresponding action, you get an additional resource, which is a really big deal. But what I love here is that if you didn't manage in your draft to get the die you need to do a certain action, you can do it anyway. You can do any action you want to with any die on your turn, and I really love that.
I thought it was fantastic. All options are open for you at all times.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, all options are open for you at all times.
So this leads to, invariably, a whole lot of analysis paralysis for those of us susceptible. So you must be aware that this is an issue here. Now, the game is really engaging. I never once felt bored, because even when somebody else was having their moment of AP, I was able to really focus on what I wanted to do and what I wanted to accomplish with my turn, because there is so much going on. There are so many actions you can do on your turn, but you only have 3 dice. So you only have 3 actions you can do, which generally means you can put out 1 control point in 3 different places, optionally. So you have to decide where you're going to do that. Often you want to do that in whatever is scoring this round. Sometimes you'll make strategic choices for the future though, and it's all balanced with what everybody else is doing around the table. So that leads into player interaction. There's a good amount of indirect player interaction here, because everything that you're doing, all your choices are based on what everybody else is doing on their turns around you, because you're vying for control. But what I love here though is it's not a very tense vying for control, because for one, you can't get it everywhere because you only have those 3 actions that you can do. Another thing, there isn't a huge difference points wise between the leader, who gets 6 victory points that round, and the second place, who gets 4 victory points, and the third place would get 2. So between those first and second place, it's only the difference between 2 points. So even securing the second place is no big deal compared to scoring none at all in any case. So you're just trying to get as high as you can in each of the scoring areas as you can. And there's actually a lot to balance to make that happen.
In addition, if you tie with any of the other players in that district, you actually split the points. Actually, you add up the points from those 2 places and then split them evenly between the number of tied players. So even tying isn't that big a deal either.
Right.
And that same abundance of actions lets you change your strategy if you find that somebody just took an action that is going to give them more control in a district, and suddenly what you were planning on doing doesn't really work anymore. Well, just change it. You might not have an exact match for the resource of that action that you now want to take, but you can still take it, and that's a wonderfully agile thing.
Yeah, and it led to a lot of the AP as well, because you would have that chance to determine what you're going to do on your next round, but then the next player and the next one right before you did something you didn't expect, and it completely changes what you need to do on your turn in order to keep your control or get back control or whatever. So yeah, it does keep you on your toes all the time. You have to be paying close attention to what everyone around you is doing. And another thing with the dice is you can actually affect some changes with them with hiring certain workers from the cards that you can draft from. So they're pretty neat as well. So there's a lot of cards. There's pink cards and blue cards. That the pink ones will help you a little bit more in the beginning of the game. The blue ones tend to help you more towards the end of the game. And they're fantastic to get because it's essentially they introduce some individual player powers by giving you different specialties in that round. So it definitely changes your strategy based on what cards you decide to draft when you take that action. And it can lead to a lot of variability in plays and increases the replayability of the game because that strategy changes so much based on those cards that you get. And I don't think I finished this thought, some of these cards will allow you to change the die face when you need to get the resources you want to. So that's a way that you can manipulate die as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of different mechanisms in here that help mitigate the fact that you're using dice. That's a big luck element right there, but you're drafting, so that mitigates some of the luck. You've got workers or citizen cards that can make it so that you can change it as you draft it or change it when you use it. And that mitigates the luck so much more. So luck really becomes less and less of a factor with each of these mechanisms.
Well, even adding on that it doesn't matter what the die is, right? You can still do any action you want to at any time.
That's the biggest one, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. In a 1 to 3 player game, you will be putting out green keep tokens throughout the game, 1 per round in a random location based on a roll of a die. And this helps to make the area control element a little bit more dynamic by introducing another player. And that makes it really helpful. Now, this game is just about that area control. We find in some games, area control can be a little exasperating, especially with smaller player counts, because it becomes a tug of war of now I got that, now you got that, now I got it, no I want it, and especially because I'm a really stubborn person, so this guy usually doesn't have a chance. But what's neat here in this game, and it makes it one of my favorite area control games, is I never got a sense of that tug of war because there's so much you can do and there's so many places you can do it with, and that element that it doesn't really matter so much whether you're first or second, so the stakes aren't quite so high. It's a matter of calculating out what's your best moves for the best chance to get the best scores and things like that, but it makes that element of the area control a little less intense than some area controls can be. Or so I found.
Yeah, Area control is not one of my favorite mechanics, but I did not mind this one at all.
This game also has influence tracks. Always love to go up a good influence track. There's always satisfaction getting up higher and racing up to the top as well. There are a lot of nuances to the game that's a lot of fun, like the monuments that you can put out. And the monuments will score based on what's around it. So there's a monument that is like a gate between two sections that will score how many people are in those two adjacent sections. There's a monument that will score based on how many manors are in that area, and one that will score for how many boats are in that section. And that's actually also a nice thing that I enjoyed, is with the ships, when you put out a ship, you have the opportunity to move it in a future round. They are the only things that can be moved, and it makes it really beneficial because when you do the ship action, it gives you that opportunity to place a new ship if you haven't placed all your 3 out yet, as well as move one. So it's one action that can actually give you 2 control points added to a section within one round, which can be very powerful. So it's kind of fun that those ships get to move around.
And actually, that's one of the things we haven't talked about, was that's where the theme really shines for me. It's the manors. They each have a title and a description. The adventurer manor, the banker's manor, and associated power that you get from them makes sense. The temples that you use to gain influence with the guilds and control within that sector or within that district, they make sense. And then you get into the monuments, where one of the manors is actually a lighthouse, and that lets you gain points from ships. Makes sense in the theme. One of the monuments, the one that gives you points for each of the manors, is actually a tower that goes on the outskirts of the city. And where each of these are placed makes sense if you were building a city. The manors can go anywhere. The monuments have very specific places that they have to be put. And it all, once you've got it all together, looks like a nice, neat little city map.
Yeah, it's neat as it comes together. And to be clear, the lighthouse is a manor, not a monument. So for my final thoughts today, for an area control game, I gotta say this is one of my favorites. And we do really enjoy this game. It's fun to get onto the table, and it's fun to think about. So even though the games were, for us, a little long, we played for about 2 hours each time, I found it engaging and enjoyable. And this is a game that will make it to our table again.
Same here. I think it's a great game. It's got some wonderful strategies in it, and has that agility of you being able to change your mind on your strategy mid-turn if you need to.
Well, thank you so much for watching our review today.
If you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe and support the channel.
And as always, happy gaming, folks. We're going to do this in one take. Hopefully it'll last.
What were you going to say about the artwork?
It looks good. First off, it's like, I think he needs a moment.
That's where she starts. Looks like I'm checking out my pecs. I don't have pecs. Peckless. In with the good air. Out with the bad air. Fooled you. Since you took the tray away from me.
Oh no.
I'm usually the organizational geek. It had a tray, I'm in love.
So my final thoughts here is okay. Let's see, what did I write?
Thought they were a final thought. They're not. Fooled you. You're going to have to stick around 30 seconds longer.